Are you tired of feeling like your stomach has its own agenda? Like the bloating, gas, or constant trips to the bathroom are running your life? Welcome to the Beyond Bloated podcast, the podcast where we tackle those frustrating gut issues head on, without strict diets or giving up your favorite foods. I'm Carly, a certified gut health coach who's been there, struggling with bloating that made me look 6 months pregnant, gut pain that kept me from enjoying meals, and fatigue so draining it felt impossible to get through the day. Now, I help women like you find freedom from those symptoms and take back control of their lives. Each week, we'll debunk gut health myths, dive into simple, actionable tips, and hear stories from women who've been exactly where you are. It's time to feel confident, energized, and bloat-free. Let's get started.
Did you know that your hormones are metabolized in your gut? This means that if your gut bacteria are out of balance, it can lead to an estrogen dominance, which then contributes to weight gain, bloating, and PMS symptoms. On top of that, about 95% of your serotonin, which is our feel-good hormone, is made in the gut. So if your gut is inflamed or imbalanced, it can also contribute to mood swings, anxiety, fatigue, and depression. I think we often forget that all of our body systems are very deeply connected. You cannot balance your hormones without balancing your gut microbiome. And then by balancing your gut microbiome, you will also improve your mental health. Today's guest provides us with a great reminder of just how connected our gut health and our hormones are, and what we can do to start balancing them both. Ciara Foy is a transformation coach and functional hormone nutritionist who empowers high-achieving women with strategies for self-care and sustained energy to chase their dreams. She is also the author of Empowered by Food, where she teaches you how to heal your hormones, balance your stress, and become literally unstoppable. In our discussion today, Ciara shares with us her own gut health journey and how it led her down the holistic health path. She also shares some very practical tips on what you can start doing today to start balancing your hormones and your gut so you can ditch that bloated belly for good. So without further ado, let's give a big warm welcome to Ciara Foy. Thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today.
Thanks so much for having me, Carly. I'm so excited to dive into this conversation with you.
Me too. And with that, let's dive right in. I would love for you to share with everyone your own origin story. What brought you into the world of gut health and women's hormones?
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to be dating myself here, so I may as well just do it. I'm now 48 years old, but when I started this journey, I officially was 28 years old. So it's been 20 years, almost 21 years, since I have been a practitioner of nutrition. And that story really started because I had my own gut health issues. When I was in my 20s, what I ate and exercise really had very little to do with my health and everything to do with pressure and control that I put on myself on how I looked and what other people thought about me. So from that perspective, and I'm a child of the 90s, so we grew up with like Kate Moss and wanting to be as skinny as possible. So when I was in my early 20s, I was eating a lot of garbage food from a perspective of like Weight Watchers and, microwaved like Slim Fast meals and whatever there was, lots of aspartame filled drinks. And needless to say, my gut health was an absolute disaster. I wasn't getting a lot of fiber. I wasn't getting a lot of whole foods. And so while I wasn't eating a lot of calories and I was thin, I definitely wasn't healthy. And I began to have so much bloating, so much constipation, cystic acne. And it really impacted my relationship. So at that time, I was engaged. We had just moved in together. And when you don't feel good and you feel bloated and constipated, like you don't want to be intimate with your partner. So, I really was trying everything I could. I went to so many different doctors and the MC at our wedding happened to be at a private clinic in Toronto, and he was able to like pull some strings, get me into a gastroenterologist. And by the time I saw her, because there was still a long wait, I had already figured out what was going on for me. I had removed a lot of highly inflammatory foods like the aspartame and all the processed foods, but also dairy and wheat. And I was feeling a lot better. You know, the first book that I ever read about nutrition was Eat Right for Your Blood Type, and I'm an O, hence why I felt, you know, quite a bit better. So the interesting thing was that I got tested for celiac. When I went to go see the doctor for her to tell me I didn't have celiac, and there was so many things wrong with this, because now we know that you have to be eating wheat when you get the test. Otherwise, it's actually not accurate. However, I was not eating wheat at the time. So in any case, she said to me, you don't have celiac, but so I want you to add gluten back into your life. You need to be eating wheat. Otherwise, you're going to be at risk for colon cancer. And so, like, I looked at her like you're looking at me right now. Like, are you kidding me? Like, you are a specialist in gut health. Well, gut disease, really. And you want me to eat something that makes me feel horrible to get fiber. But wait a second, I could have a million different things. I can have chia, I can have flax, I can have hemp, I can have fruit, I can have vegetables. I could go on and on about the other things that I could eat that are whole foods that are not processed wheat products, right? So anyway, that was really when a light bulb went on for me, because I had had such a painful journey leading up to that place that I really felt disgruntled with the whole system. And I had kind of, you know, figured out a good portion of it at that point. Definitely not everything. I mean, 20 years in, I'm still learning every day. But it was what inspired me to go back to school and to actually become a holistic nutritionist so that I could help other people. So that was my gateway.
Amazing. Well, I'm glad you figured out your own solution, because unfortunately, a lot of us have experienced what you experienced. You go to the doctor, you look for help, and they either brush you off or they give you some absurd advice like eat ultra processed wheat to feel better and prevent cancer? Question mark. That's interesting. But unfortunately, like I said, it happens. And also the way that you kind of began your journey with eating food that you thought was good for you because it's promoted as good, you know, back in the day, low fat, fat free was not good for you, but we thought it was. So I always like to remind people, you know, it's not your fault that you got here, because we live in a society where the wrong foods are promoted to us as healthy, and it's hard to determine what is right for you specifically as well. Interesting, the blood type thing. I'm also an O, and I've also heard about the eating for your blood type. So that's cool. But I also wanted to touch on your book, because I know you have a book, Empowered by Food. So this book emphasizes the connection between nutrition and your overall well-being, which was obviously a big part of your journey. It was a big part of my journey. So how does food play a role in specifically like balancing hormones and improving digestion?
Absolutely. So gut health is critical from a basic perspective of the foundation, right? So everything always comes back to the gut, as you know. So we always want to be starting there. So, you know, when I went through that journey, that's kind of where I started. And from a perspective of feeling our best, having energy, you know, preventing disease, our nutrition is extremely important. And what's even more important than that is understanding how what we eat, the combination of foods that we're eating, when we are eating, affects our hormones. And so from the very beginning in my practice, now spanning 2 decades, I was very much focused on blood sugar management, because if you are not balancing your blood sugar, you cannot balance any other hormone in your body. It starts there. So, you know, at the top, I mean, there's all sorts of other neurotransmitters and stuff. But if we start where oxytocin is, so our love hormone, our connection, then from there we have insulin and we have cortisol. So From those three hormones, everything else is downstream. All our sex hormones are downstream. So if we want to manage any hormone, and this has been the basis of my practice, whether somebody comes to me because they're burnt out, whether they're coming to me because they can't sleep, because they want to lose weight, because they are struggling with infertility, with PCOS. And now, as a 48-year-old woman, perimenopause and menopause has been shunned for a very, very long time. And so I have gone through this, transition. I still regularly have my cycle, but I have been helping women to understand the connection between what they eat and their blood sugar so that they can take back control of their lives. Because if we're talking about, again, our energy, our mood, our cravings, wanting to actually be in control of our choices, a lot of that starts with blood sugar management. And there's a huge connection between our blood sugar and our mental health as well. So, that combined with gut health is really the foundation where everything else is built on.
Yeah, that's a great point on what you brought up and how it's all connected. Mental health, hormonal health, gut health. There is no one or the other. I often have women come to me, obviously, who are struggling with gut issues, but they also have depression, anxiety, they have terrible periods, no matter, if they're young or middle-aged or whatever, they're having hormonal imbalances, symptoms from that, and they don't often realize that it is connected. So I'm glad that we're talking about this today. And on the point of blood sugar balancing, that is definitely crucial. So could you expand a little bit on what that means and how to balance your blood sugar levels?
Hey everyone, Carly here. If you are tired of feeling bloated and uncomfortable, which I know you are, I have something that can really help. My free ultimate guide to bloat busting. I've been there myself, and I know how frustrating it is to try super restrictive diets and expensive supplements without getting results. If those methods were going to work, they would have worked by now. That's why I created this guide to offer you a different approach. In the ultimate guide to bloat busting, you'll learn techniques to listen to your body and eat with intention, avoiding overeating and choosing foods that truly benefit you, tips for proper hydration to support digestion and reduce bloating, a guide to delicious foods that promote a healthy gut and how to easily incorporate them into your meals, and effective methods to manage stress, which plays a huge role in gut health. These simple, practical strategies can make a big difference in your daily life, helping you feel lighter, more energized, and comfortable in your own skin. Ready to ditch the bloat without strict diets or costly supplements? Download your free copy today at beyondbloated.com/ultimate-guide and start your journey to a bloat-free life. Now, let's get back to it.
Yeah, for sure. So, balancing our blood sugar really comes down to understanding your macros in a way. So, your macronutrients, proteins, fats, and carbs, you want to have a balance of those things in every meal. So, what does that look like? It's going to be slightly different for everybody. But, if I were to throw out a number, it would be like 30, 30, 40, like 30% protein, 30% fat, which is like a moderate amount. That's not low fat, but it's also not high fat. And then like 40% carbohydrates, right? If somebody's trying to lose weight or they have insulin resistance, we switch things up, but that's a good balance. You want to be having, if you can visualize in your mind a plate, half of that plate should be your non-starchy vegetables. Lots of fiber, lots of colors, lots of nutrients, and lots of volume. And then if we look at another quarter of that plate, that could be some of your starchy carbohydrates. Maybe you're having squash, maybe you're having beans, depending on, what works for you and your digestion, sweet potatoes, rice, grains, etc. And then the other quarter would be protein. Protein has a very big role in balancing our blood sugar and really satisfying our cravings and keeping us from overeating, because it is the most satiating macronutrient. So we always want to be getting at least 30 grams of protein for, our 3 main meals at a minimum. And that really goes a long way. So those are our macronutrients, but then we want to talk about fiber. So all those non-starchy vegetables that I was talking about, they're going to have your fiber in them as well. And then when we're talking about fat, that often comes from our protein source. If you were eating, not just if you were eating animal protein, because also edamame has a good source of fat as well. So you're going to have the fat. So 30% of all protein still breaks down into glucose. And of course, our carbohydrates break down into glucose. So the way that we slow down absorption of, glucose into our bloodstream is with fiber and with fat. So, we want to have that balance of all of our macronutrients. And then we want to have enough fiber so that we are slowing down the absorption. And as well, fat does that too. Fat is the only macronutrient that doesn't impact your blood sugar. So when you add fat to a protein and a carbohydrate source, it changes how quickly that food is absorbed into your bloodstream. And so what we want to be doing is we want to have these steady levels of blood sugar instead of having massive increases and then equal crashes. That's what we want to avoid, because when we are doing that, we are always relying on our body to manage our blood sugar by our pancreas secreting insulin. And then insulin comes in and it looks at all this glucose in our blood and it says, hey, cells, open up. We have, more glucose than we need, and we're going to push it into the cells and save it for later. So we really want to reduce the reliance on that, because the more that you are always relying on insulin, the more resistant your body will eventually become, right? Becomes less sensitive, right? Your cells become less sensitive to the insulin, so it's not working as well. And this can happen at any point in our life, but for women, in their late 30s into 40s and beyond, that really becomes a significant issue because estrogen is very protective for insulin sensitivity. So that's a long kind of explanation of what that looks like. But if people can go back to that visual, make sure you have lots of non-starchy vegetables. You're always having a protein with every meal. And that is where most women usually only have protein, like a good amount, like over that 30 grams at dinner. Because even if you're having 2 eggs for breakfast, it's only like 13 grams of protein, 12, 13, depending if you're having extra large eggs or not. So, we want to make sure that we are taking pressure off of our body, because when your blood sugar goes up and down, your energy goes up and down, your mood goes up and down. And the process that I just explained also is, creates inflammation in your body too, right? And inflammation is the root cause of all degenerative disease. So we want to make sure that we are always addressing that fire and reducing that inflammatory fire as much as we can. We do that with, eating lots of fruits and vegetables too that are anti-inflammatory, and as well making sure that we have more stable blood sugar so that we are not having these massive fluctuations. And that just allows you to be in control, have great steady energy, not be hungry all the time. And it also helps it's helping you to manage stress, because when your blood sugar is fluctuating or when you skip meals, your body is under so much stress, right? And we all have a lot of stress in our lives. So anything that you can do yourself that is under your control, that's what we want to focus on, because there's so much that we can't control. And then the other thing is, if for anybody's having problems sleeping, blood sugar balance is extremely important, right? So once clients come in to see me, that those kind of things just dissipate naturally by supporting your body and helping her feel safe, which is all of these things that we do so that, we're not putting all of the hard hard work. She's not doing all of the heavy lifting, but we're partners in this. So that is what blood sugar balancing looks like. And it has far reaching impact, and something that everybody should learn about.
Absolutely. That was a great explanation. Thank you for that. And there's some good takeaways too on how to kind of start doing it yourself. I also had an experience with that back in the day. I was snacking all the time and I was not eating any protein for breakfast, just sugary cereals and all that disgusting stuff. And I felt terrible. I was tired all the time. I had so many gut issues. And I was young, I wasn't in perimenopause or menopause or anything of the sort. I was in my 20s and I still felt horrible because my blood sugar was not being balanced. So it definitely is helpful for any age. And like you said, it helps with so many different symptoms. And I also want to talk about something else you mentioned. And that's about, 2 eggs is not a breakfast. And I find a lot of women are afraid of eating too much. They think if they want to lose weight, they skip breakfast, they have an egg at lunch, then they have the big dinner because, that's kind of what we've been trained to in our society. It's like you sit down, you have a big dinner at the end of the day, which is actually the opposite of what you should be doing if you want great digestion.
Agreed.
So can you talk a little bit about how us women should not be afraid to just eat the food?
Yes, it's extremely important. And like I said, like child of the 90s over here. So it was even, the diet culture was even worse back then. So it is one of those things that is pervasive, as you said. And just yesterday, I shared on my Instagram a picture, which was a client had shared in one of my group programs of her breakfast, which was like just a stellar breakfast. And I'll tell you what it was. But it was like a full plate of food. And, I posted it and said, it looks like a lot of food, right? she had eggs with she had probably 1 egg with extra egg whites. She had some apple. She had a bunch of spinach. She had some cut up chicken breast, and she had some black beans. Yeah. So she had all of that, right? So she had greens, she had fruit, she had like a starchy vegetable with lots of fiber. She had her eggs. So she had some good fats in there. And she also had chicken. So that was her breakfast. And she is somebody who has lost over 15 pounds since mid-January.
Woo, go her.
Yeah. Right. And she's in menopause and like 51 years old. So yeah, it's really something that it's not we do need to be in a deficit to lose weight, but it's not the only thing. I have so many clients come to me who've been, tracking their meals, following macros, but they're not eating what is actually going to fuel their body. Their digestion's not on point. Their blood sugar balance is off. They're eating processed foods. So it's never just about calories in, calories out, right? So, we can't deny the science of thermodynamics, but it is certainly not everything. And the problem for most women is if you push that lever too much, your body does the opposite. So what is also true is that you can be in a calorie deficit and not lose weight. That client in the past has done Bernstein diet. So up here in Canada, it's 500 calories, maybe 800 calories a day with, B12 shots. And you come in and you see a nurse and all of these crazy things. And so she is shocked that she is eating so much food and that she is losing weight and feeling better than she ever has. And she was actually referred by her chiropractor, who is my client, who, when she came to me, she was only eating 1 meal every 48 hours.
Oh my God.
Okay. 1 meal. And most of the women who come to me are scared, as you said. They are absolutely petrified of gaining weight if they start to eat more. And so I always just have to tell them, you got to trust me. I've been doing this for 20 years. This chiropractor, she's like, okay, I will trust you. And sure enough, within 6 months, she was eating more food than she ever had, and she'd lost 40 pounds.
Incredible.
So, yeah. It's really all about the quality, the blood sugar balance, the, like your circadian rhythm, how you are managing your stress. I mean, your sleep is absolutely critical to, your hormones, everything, right? So if your sleep is off, you're going to be hungrier. You're not going to be satisfied with the food that you eat. It's never just one thing, but starving ourselves does not work. Right. And then the consequence of not eating enough gets worse as you get older, because once you hit 30, you start losing more muscle mass. And the more muscle mass you lose, the lower your metabolism. Right. And also it increases your risk of many degenerative diseases. So we have to hold on to our muscle mass and, really work on our bone density. And you have to eat enough to support your body. If you starve her, what ends up happening is that, she's always on your side and trying to support you, but, she's trying to help you to survive. So she will down-regulate your thyroid function if you are not eating enough, just so that you can survive on the little calories that you are giving her. So this is what we have to understand, is we have to partner with her, because your body is perfect. It knows exactly what to do, and she's always protecting you. So if you're not getting the results that you want, it's about listening to her, because she's always giving you the answers.
That is so, so true. You are not broken. Your body is telling you what it needs. And oftentimes it needs more food, and it needs more nutrient dense food, balanced meals, all things that we've talked about so far. And you're right, your body needs food as fuel. And if you aren't giving it enough fuel, it holds on to every ounce of fat that you have, because it's in survival mode. It doesn't know when the next meal is coming, and it's like, we're not letting this go, because what if she stops eating and we need this?
Yeah.
So it makes sense, you need to eat more than the bare minimum to lose the weight, so your body will let it go. Yeah, it's like so eye-opening to so many people, including myself. Back in the day, I didn't know eating more could help you lose weight. It's the opposite of what we've been trained once again. And it's just relearning, That's why we do these episodes. We have experts on who can talk about this, because we're just learning and implementing what we learn so we can improve ourselves. So it's all good. Yeah. And I wanted to ask one more thing. So I know you work specifically with women in perimenopause and menopause. Basically, if you're in premenopause, perimenopause, menopause, everybody should be eating enough. Everybody should be balancing their food. But is there anything that you should be doing a little differently, something you should be doing more of once you're in perimenopause or menopause?
Yeah. So, I've worked with women for 20 years. So I've worked with them from their 20s until now, and specializing in this area. But it's really understanding the changes that are going on and how we can better support our body through the changes. So some of the major changes that are happening with our hormones, with respect to estrogen, with respect to progesterone, we have to be aware so that we can, change things. And so one of the things is stress, right? So stress is huge. And a lot of women go through a lot of major, life changes in their 40s. So whether they're taking care of ailing parents, or they have children, they might have young children, they might have teenagers, they might be going through divorce, career change. It's a very stressful decade of a woman's life. In fact, studies have shown that women over 50 actually report being happiest, because a lot of these, they're actually through a lot of these things. So some of the things that we have to understand is, what we're talking about, like under eating, is a form of stress. Blood sugar imbalance is a form of stress. Not sleeping enough is a form of stress. All of those things are giving your body the message that there's a problem, right? And so, like I said, it's impacting your thyroid. And a lot of women get diagnosed, at all ages, but there's a increase of diagnosis of autoimmune disease in women in their 40s. And most autoimmune disease is in women. So, and a lot of that has to do with that stress connection. So it's really understanding what that looks like, because doing the endless cardio, again, huge amount of stress, right? The amount of women that come to me that were, triathletes and marathon runners and like don't understand what is going on with their body, because we have to listen to her and approach things differently, right? So understanding that our body's under more stress, we have to look at all of the ways that we can help to support her. So all those things that I mentioned, so we need to do more weight training, more holding on to that muscle that I mentioned that's going to stay metabolically active and protect us as we get older. I do a lot of walking. It's still good to do intense exercise, but not the, an hour of HIIT 5 times a week. That is absolutely going to burn them out at that stage. But, doing some sprints, for 10 minutes, some interval sprints once or twice a week, along with your weight training and, hiking and walking, that can be great. So it's really just, learning what your body needs, and the eating enough food is definitely a big part of that. The other huge thing with respect to gut health actually is that women go through massive changes in their microbiome in their 40s. And so in addition to stress, studies have shown that the microbiome changes and the stress are the two main things that cause women the most amount of grief. So increasing a lot of their perimenopause symptoms, which is definitely not just hot flashes. There's like 100 of them, literally. Everything from like frozen shoulder to brain fog to hot flashes to increase in ADHD, anxiety, so many things. The microbiome needs to be attended to properly, which again means eating enough nutrient-dense foods and eating enough fiber. So we want to be getting at least 30, but optimally 35 grams of fiber a day for women. So, and that amount is more than what is recommended for men, because what they have found is when there's not enough fiber and we're not feeding our microbiome, and obviously that's not the only thing, like fermented foods, diversity of the foods that you're eating is one of the most important things for your microbiome. Studies have shown that a woman can eat the exact same amount of calories and still have an increase in visceral fat storage, that fat around your organs that is particularly damaging for your health, with no changes in the calories, just during perimenopause and menopause. But an increase in fiber and really focusing on the quality of food can completely prevent or reverse that. So those are the things that we really have to look at. And again, gut health is so important for hormones. Just for example, if I have a woman come in who's constipated most often, which, I don't know about you, but that was definitely more the norm in my practice. And, I know that she's going to be having a problem with her hormones, because if we're not having regular bowel movements, then when we're, breaking down our food, our body is not able to get rid of all the toxic byproducts. And also things like, if your body doesn't need the estrogen, it's not going to have a vehicle. It has to attach to fiber and be brought out through your elimination system, whatever is not needed, right? So if your body has extra estrogen, it's going to stay there if you're constipated. If you're eating really well, but your cholesterol levels were high and now you've changed things and you're eating really well, but nothing's changing. Well, again, if you're not eating properly and your digestion isn't working, then your body's not able to take that cholesterol, attach it to the fiber, and then bring it out through your elimination system. So, there's so many things that I see, estrogen dominance being a big one in the younger population if there is a lot of gut health problems, especially constipation. But it shows up everywhere when our body isn't working properly, our digestion isn't working properly, our skin. is one of the biggest things that we will see that on too, because it's our body's largest detoxification organ. So if your body is not able to literally get rid of crap, it is going to show up, in places that you definitely don't want. So that's, just one of the many ways that hormones and gut health are connected. But specifically, whatever a woman got away with, I will kind of like end it with that. Whatever women got away with when they were younger, like in your 20s, and then you get to your 30s and you kind of have to do things a little bit different. You really have to throw all that out when you get into your 40s. It is a time when you just have to double down on just taking impeccable care of yourself.
And that's what it comes down to. Taking care of yourself, listening to your body, giving it what she needs. And yeah, it might be a little different than when you were in your 20s, but that doesn't mean you have to suffer. People are like, oh, menopause is coming, life is over. It doesn't have to be that way. You can make a few little changes here and there and still feel incredible. Improve your hormone health, your gut health, your mental health, all of it, which is very exciting, I think, because life doesn't have to end in your 40s. Absolutely not. You still have a lot of life in you. So make these changes because you have given us so much information today, which I am very appreciative of. So could you please let us know where we can find you and learn more about your work?
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Carly. So the main platform that I'm active on is definitely Instagram. So I'm at Ciara Foy Inc. on Instagram. So we can definitely put that in the show notes. I will give you a link for a free masterclass. It is for, women 40 plus, but it really is for everybody. As we discussed, blood sugar balance and the things I teach, they haven't changed because I specifically support more perimenopause, menopause women. That just is the area that I'm marketing to and speaking to the most. But all of the things that I talk about are definitely important for all people, especially women across the board. So I'll give you a link if anybody wants to really dive into more information. Masterclass has about 3 hours of content of me talking about this stuff. So, and that's a free opt-in. So if anybody wants to reach out and say hi or, looking for more resources, feel free to get in contact and I will help you out.
Amazing. Thank you so much. That's very exciting. I'm going to check that masterclass out. I love learning. Like you said, we're always learning, even though we've been doing this for as long as we've been doing it, I'm still reading and learning and meeting new people, and it never ends because our health is a journey and I'm excited for that. So I will link all of that information in the notes for everybody so they can go and get the free masterclass and see you on Instagram. Please reach out to Ciara. She is very, very intelligent. She knows what she's doing. She's had her own experience as well, which I always think is most important. When you've lived it, you've come out the other side, you have a whole other understanding on what it is that needs to be done to help other people. And that's why we do this. We didn't do it because we learned about it in a textbook. We lived it and we're like, we need to help people. So thank you so much for sharing your experience with us, your background and all the information. It has been very, very helpful and I'm excited for everyone to hear it.
You're welcome, Carly. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Did you learn something new and useful today? If the answer is a big, resounding hell yeah, do me a favor. Subscribe to this podcast. Even better, toss a rating in there too. It helps more bloated babes discover this show and lets me keep bringing you this free, gut-loving content every single week. And hey, don't be greedy. Share this episode with your bestie who's always unbuttoning her pants after dinner. She will love you even more for it. Thanks for hanging out with me and showing your gut some love. Keep on putting what you learn into practice and you will be bloat-free in no time. Catch you in the next one. Bye!